Welcome back to Redneck Reviews. My name's Gavin, and today we have the Trailmaster Hurricane 200X. Now this is what I would consider to be the king of all mini bikes. Reason for that is front and rear suspension, already comes with a 30 series torque converter on it, and hydraulic disc brakes front and rear. The biggest plus of this bike here is by far having hydraulic disc brakes. I actually got started with a Baja Warrior MB200, very similar platform, except what I started with didn't have disc brakes in the rear. It was a drum that either liked to be completely locked up or not slow you down at all. And I had to put the torque converter on it. I did all that work. I'll show you a picture of where I got it to before I inevitably got rid of it before I moved down here to wonderful Tennessee. But I bought that bike when I was 16 years old, and it's what got me into bikes. It was the bike that started it all for me. I learned a lot working on these little motors. I can honestly say, if you want to get something for one of your kids, you want to get them into working and wrenching on stuff, this is a wonderful platform to start with. Now, these 196cc OHV motors are really easy to tear into, tear apart. Say if he messes something up, say if you mess something up, and you want to take it apart, maybe put a cam in it, remove the governor, stuff like that, it's extremely easy to learn how to do that on one of these motors. You can pull it out of the frame, pop that case apart, and just start digging into these things, and not be too awful worried that you're going to mess something up. It's pretty fairly easy. But if you want to know how to get into working on cars, maybe have more confidence tearing into a car motor in the future, this is a great place to start, especially for your younger people out there. Now, you can get all kinds of parts for these. I will be putting all of the available parts for this bike on this bike, but I originally just wanted to test it out and see what it was like bone stock for you people out there that don't plan on digging into this motor and making it more than what it is. Now, why would you buy this over other mini bikes on the market? I know there's the Warriors, X-Pro's got one out, you got the Colemans, all of that. Now this thing, we've got front rear suspension. A lot of the offerings out there, you either don't have front and rear, or they only have front, or you don't have this level of suspension. Now I will say, you are pretty limited on travel in the rear from the factory. I will be putting longer shocks in the rear, and I'm not sure if they make a longer travel front suspension for this, but I can say that was its biggest limiting factor over the weekend, was by far the suspension. We outran the travel really quickly, although we did get moving pretty good. And I will say, sorry about the footage. Somehow hyper smooth on my GoPro got turned off, so it's pretty rough. Another plus to this over, say, a Baja Warrior is the rear set pegs. Somebody that has quite a few dirt bikes and things like that, I will say these pegs are fairly easy for your feet to slip off of just because they're so rounded. I would like to see maybe an option where we could throw some dirt bike pegs on the rear of this. The rear sets definitely help for getting up, weighting the rear tire, getting off the seat in them rougher spots where you know you're going to be bottoming out the suspension and you don't want to be taking up all that load with your back. Now, I had this thing out for most of the day yesterday. We ran it completely out of a tank of gas. I'll say we got about 5.5 hours worth of riding, at full throttle with this thing. Most of it was cranking into it at full throttle. And we still got 5.5 hours out of 1 tank of gas. Now from the factory, these are coming with a 1.3, 1.4 gallon tank, somewhere in there. I'll throw it up on the screen. These do not use a whole lot of gas. It's a very cheap way to go out, have fun. Now, the money you're saving on gas with something like this going out, it's not the only consumable you're going to be going through. Torque converter belts. You always want to bring an extra belt with you out on the trail, especially if it's a wet day or something like that. The torque converter belts, you can wear through them fairly quickly, especially when you start putting a little bit more power into these. I am looking forward to throwing the Juggernaut torque converter system on this and see if that helps a little bit with eating up the belts. We've got a couple solid days of riding on this bike, and I say we're still on the stock belt. It's lasted longer than I thought it would. Let's talk about the seat. Nice, plush, cushy seat. Almost acts like a little bit of suspension for you. I love the seats on these things. Now, coming from dirt bikes, you don't have a whole lot of room to move forward and back. I'm not really complaining. It's not a dirt bike, it's a mini bike. You know, you're not gonna be moving around as much on the seat. You know, if you're getting to really rough stuff, standing up, really weighting the rear with them rear sets, probably gonna be the way to go. Now, the rear suspension, it is fairly stiff. You don't have a whole lot of travel. It runs out really quickly. And we bottomed this thing out a lot. We beat the tar out of this thing over the weekend. Really put it through its paces, pushed it to its limit, and it outperformed what I thought it would do. It went way beyond what I thought it would do. It went places I never thought it would go. Now, this is not a dirt bike. You people out there that are like, why don't you just buy a dirt bike? This is a completely different platform. I'll tell you why this is a good option over maybe a dirt bike. If you're just getting into riding, or maybe I have many other dirt bikes and other things to ride. I've got a DRZ, the X-Pro Hawk, a 1986 Honda Fat Cat. I have other bikes. Now, why did I buy this? I really missed my Baja Warrior. It was so fun to just hop on, pull, go. Also, with those, certain things that would normally not be a challenge are a challenge with this. For newer riders out there, this has a much lower seat height than most of your dirt bikes. So, if you're just starting out riding something with a motor, and you're a little weary on whether or not you're gonna like 2 wheels, this is gonna add a lot of confidence. Now, my mom, we actually put on this thing just to see how she would do. She made it all the way around the yard, no issues, didn't break 5 miles an hour, but she was able to get on it. I've never seen her on anything with 2 wheels and a motor before. My buddy John got on this. He's not a big fan of 2 wheels. He doesn't ride 2 wheels a lot. He was still able to push this thing pretty good off-road. That low seat height really helps a lot when it comes to pushing this thing. In the rough stuff, there were a few times where down through here we got scraping a little bit. We really took this on some gnarly stuff. I don't know if they offer a different, longer travel front end for this. It could use a little bit more front suspension. It definitely needs some longer rear. We'll be putting some longer rear on it, but I know I can get rear shocks. Let me know in the comment section if you know of a good front end for this thing that I can throw on it, get a little bit more travel, and really push this thing. If nobody makes one, please, somebody come out with something. Go Power Sports. We need a front end that's more sturdy for this thing. Top speed wise, from the factory, only thing I did to this was loosen the screw. Now, down a slight grade, we got this thing up to 50 miles an hour out of the box. Now, most of the riding you're gonna do around, really getting into it and rougher stuff, you're only gonna be hitting between 27 and 33 miles an hour in the dirt. That was on the road with a slight downgrade. We were able to get up to 50 miles an hour, which is extremely impressive out the box, which partially means, in my opinion, it might be geared slightly high. It did, when we got to some of the trails, it started to slip the belt a little. So some lower gearing in that rougher stuff would probably help. But for most of your applications, just riding around the yard, basic trails, not the heavy stuff that we were hitting, this will do great. By far worth the $1,300 shipped to your door that I paid for this thing. Now, I'll probably change out the grips, put new bars on, new headlight. This thing will be seeing some modifications to really make it how I want it. Real gas tank, the options are out there. You can do quite a bit with it. And we're going to show you why this is such a good platform for people to go out there, modify, make their own, and really have fun with these on the trails at a low cost. Dirt bikes get really expensive really quick. Now, if you purely neglect this motor, say you run it dry of oil, you blow up the motor, you can get a new motor for fairly cheap. Pull it out, throw it on, put your new torque converter on there, you're off, you're going. It's not like you need to blow up your motor, you need to fully rebuild it. Anything you break on these things, it's easy to fix, easy to change, and it's a great way to go if you're just starting out with two wheels off-road. Now, these tires, I will say they're much better than what came stock on my Baja Warrior. I would like something a little bit more aggressive for my application. They stuck wonderfully on asphalt. You can really get this thing leaning pretty good before you feel that tire is going to start slipping out from under you on the pavement. Now, a lot of the hills and mountains we tried to put this thing up, it kind of struggled a little bit, partially because I think the gearing might be slightly high from the factory. The torque converter slipped a little bit, and can address those issues. I believe we can get this thing to go and be a hill climbing monster. Bike only weighs 200 pounds. I can fully load this into the back of the truck without ramps by myself, and it fits in the back of the bed with the tailgate up. I believe we got a 5.5 foot bed on that truck. You can fit this in quite a few places. Hauling it to wherever you want to go is pretty easy. What I don't like about this thing, all the issues that I've had with it, rear suspension bottoms out pretty quick. Front suspension needs a little bit more travel. I wish it sat up just a hair higher. The pull cord, sometimes it doesn't want to engage. You'll have to fiddle with it a while, but eventually, see, there it goes. It won't grab. You just got to fiddle with it a little bit. Occasionally the cord hangs out a little too far. I might get a lighter handle for it, a little bit smaller handle. I can see this round loop being likely to catch, I'd say, a limb or something on the trail and rip off. So I know they make smaller handles you can get for these to really be able to give it a rip and go. More into the motor, right here where the choke and fuel on off is, we cracked that on our trail riding over the weekend, broke that apart a little bit. Just the plastic. We're going to be replacing this part anyway when we go to the stage 1 kit. And pretty much if you break any part on this thing, you can find it to replace it. If you're going to be riding this thing at night, you're going to want to get a new headlight. It's pretty useless trying to ride it at night. It's doable. You're not going to be going very fast because you're going to be pretty limited with what this comes with stock for a headlight. There's quite a few options out there for aftermarkets you can get. You might want to increase the size of your stator. Make it so this thing will put out a little bit more juice and give you a little bit more options for lighting if you're going to be riding this at night. Something I liked about my old MB200 Warrior was the on-off switch for the headlight. This headlight, it runs all the time. It's just on. Just something to note, there is no switch to turn it on or off. Another thing I don't like, the location of the fill port for the gas tank. Pretty much any mini bike you get, your gas port's going to be all in the same place, right here under the false tank. This does nothing but aesthetics looks. The only reason this is here. Does look pretty good, I will say. This V-Rod-esque rails they got here, but it gets in the way of being able to fill this thing up. It can be a pain, but we will be on the channel putting a real gas tank on this thing up top so we don't have that issue a little bit more. Get us a little bit more fuel capacity out of it. Now these foot pegs they come with, they fold out of the way pretty easy if you hit something like that on the trail. You just need to fold them up to fit it somewhere. They are fairly rounded off, and you get a bunch of mud and stuff on your shoes while you're out on the trail. It's pretty easy to have your foot sliding and slipping off of these. So having the possibility to maybe put in dirt bike pegs, that little bit more grip in the rear, really would be a nice option. If there are foot pegs that are like that, that I can put these on here that I don't know about, please somebody tell me about them in the comments section. Usually y'all are pretty good about that. Now what do I absolutely love about this bike? The brakes. Hydraulic disc brakes, front and rear. As I said with my old one, my old Baja Warrior had a drum brake in the rear and no front brakes. It really limited what I was able to take that thing on and how hard I was willing to push it. I feel much more confident knowing that I have that safety feature on here, and I wouldn't have even attempted to take this thing places where I did if I didn't have those front brakes. That large contact patch of that front tire really helped on descent and really makes this a much more capable unit overall just by having that front brake. The descents I put this thing on were heavy. I'll show you in the clips. This thing, I pulled it out of the box and it started on the very first pull. Threw some gas in it, gave it a pull, and it started. I was amazed. I was shocked. Of course, these 196cc OHV motors slide your choke all the way over. They like choke even when they're warm. And pretty much every time on the first pull, you're gonna be able to get this thing to start. There's my issue with the thing not catching. All right, now that I've actually been able to get this thing to catch, let's give it a pull. Choke all the way on for one of these. First pull every time. Goes idling a little bit high right now, but pretty much first pull every time. Great way to go. Now, something to know, my MB200 Baja Warrior, my biggest gripe with it was where the exhaust was. I don't know how this is set much different. I think it might be slightly lower in the chassis than my Baja Warrior was, but this sits a little bit higher off the ground. But the exhaust was right under your leg right here. You really noticed the heat start to build up as you rode that bike. This, it's a little bit farther away from your leg. You've got one of these shields on the other side here. It's a wonderful thing to have. And I'm sure when I put the new exhaust on this thing, which I have already and will be doing, it'll be just as nice and won't be much of an issue. The only real problem we had with this thing over the weekend was it was pretty much a brand new unit when we took it out, which means the chain hadn't been stretched yet. So we went out, chain popped off a couple times, loosens up quite a bit on that first aggressive ride. So we just tightened it up, didn't have any more problems with the chain popping off. But I will say, if the chain pops off to this side, it can be quite the hassle to get that chain back on with the chain guard on. So what I did for this, I did remove the chain guard. Not fully recommended for everybody, just what I prefer to do. There is some safety to it, having a chain guard, but I will be running this without the chain guard for when the chain pops off, because we do a lot of really aggressive riding with this thing, and no matter how hard we try, we definitely will be popping the chain off the rear sprocket a time or two. Now, something I liked about my Baja Warrior that this does not have was the storage for the tank. Being able to have a spot to throw some spare belts while you're on the trail, maybe a couple tools. You know, for this, tightening that rear chain would have been nice to be able to do that on the trail, not have to go back to be able to tighten it up. Or say, being able to take off that side cover to throw a new belt on. Having a spot to put the tools to be able to swap things out like that on the trail a little bit further away from home could really save you quite a bit. Now, it does have this rear rack on here, so if you did want to put a bag on there or something like that, strap it down, you could put it back here. But it doesn't come with a spot to just flat out be able to throw that stuff and be good to go. For $1,300 shipped to your door, I think there's no better mini bike on the market, flat out. This is the best one I've been able to find, and I know I'm buying it from a reputable company. Go Power Sports. I know they have wonderful customer service. I'm not paid to say this. Great company, and I will gladly be buying more things from them in the future. Now overall, this thing greatly surprised me on how capable it was off-road, on the trails. We really pushed this thing hard. Once again, sorry about the video quality. Somehow hyper smooth on my GoPro got turned off, so it's pretty rough, but we'll roll the footage. Thanks for watching Redneck Reviews. If you liked the video, subscribe. Maybe drop a like, a comment, please. If you have any questions, maybe I forgot to say something or you need to correct me, comment section.
Ooh, that sounded good.
Performance air filter, this little thing has got a front brake.
Yeah, I wasn't even to the bigger up yet. Woo. That's what they did to keep my guts out.
DRZ. And then
all the way down.
Front brakes are phenomenal. Like, there's so much more control.